What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn on the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at Will Pod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. All 32 pod TOJ talks. We all know the deal by now. Happy New Year's to folks that will be listening to this tomorrow. Folks that are, crazy like me that may be listening to this tonight. Enjoy your New Year's Eve, obviously. Want to come on here, talk for 15 minutes or so, just quickly about, post 36 hours or 48 hours ago with Jets Bills. And then just a few of the things that have kind of popped up over the last, 24 hours or so, regarding some of the Jets head coaching and candidate searches and things of that nature. Look, in terms of Sunday, look, we don't need to beat a dead horse here. I mean, in general, awful game, awful effort level performance. This was the dam finally breaking on this season. I felt like, in many ways, this year's been one of the most frustrating because obviously the expectations, right, and Rodgers and the injuries, the firings, every thing possible that could have going wrong, and all that stuff. That's all fair. And sometimes it feels like, they're just unlucky this year. Yeah, I did feel like that at times where the kicking game, penalties one way or another. Hey, if they just did this or they just did that. Every game kind of felt like a one-score game outside of obviously San Fran, Arizona. Sporadically, every other game was, the Steelers got out of hand in the second half, but generally speaking, 0-7, right, in six point or less games, a couple of exciting wins, albeit against bad teams, generally speaking. But Sunday was finally that it was ugly. It was embarrassing, frankly. I felt like there's been a lot of times this year where you could get frustrated and, at this point, they were 4-12 or 4-11 going into this game. You weren't expecting much. They're going on the road to a division rival who hates them, who loves beating them up in Buffalo. And Buffalo's great at front running. That's what they are. And it's not necessarily an indictment on them, but when they get rolling at home, I mean, they have the best second half point differential in the league by a wide margin. This isn't some shocking news, but 7-0. The Jets come back. The defense gets I didn't feel like they got torched in the opening drive, but, I think 5 penalties or something crazy like that. And the offense opens up. It looks decent. Not great, but looks decent. Good opening drive. They've been good on opening scripts thus far this year, especially under Downing. And, they go for it on 3rd and 1. Rodgers rolls out. And instead of just running for it, instead of hitting maybe potentially Lazard or Yeboah earlier, waits. Zach Wilson-ish in a lot of ways, where it's just get rid of the fucking ball, dude. Throw the ball. He's open. Doesn't throw it. Eventually does throw it. And tells Kenny Yeboah, go upfield, keep going. He could have walked in for his 500th touchdown. Rodgers hits Yeboah in the ankles. Could Kenny have stopped and caught it? Probably. A more athletic tight end, probably with better ball skills, maybe be able to adjust to that, but he didn't. It was a terrible throw. And then the Jets go in a shotgun, go for it on 4th down and get stuffed. Another run up the middle at a shotgun instead of under center. Mind-blowing. They don't quarterback sneak it, obviously. And, they use Braylon Allen finally, but then they use him at a shotgun. It just was a mess. Hey, the Jets got to stop. Come back down. Another good drive. It's just an interception. And, the interception is not really on Rodgers. Carter Warren didn't get into his guy. Morgan Moses goes out. He's a guy, again, another guy who should be on IR, but is trying to play for this team. And I'll come back to the Morgan Moses kind of attitude of it all. The game, obviously, 7-0. Jets defense kind of settles in a little bit. Buffalo's not playing sharp, I would say. And Will McDonald's, wreaking havoc a little bit. Good Quincy game. And the Jets get the ball pinned down at the 3-yard line. Right? And first play, sack. Or second play, sack, whatever it was. And take a safety. Look, Max Mitchell got eviscerated. No question about it. Rodgers has to have a self-timer clock in his head there of I got to get rid of this thing. I got to do something. Waited forever. Hesitated because the route wasn't there and you don't want to throw a pick six. I get it. But at the same time, taking a safety there, and then all of a sudden it's 12-0. They go in half, and the game was over. You knew it was over. You come out of the second half, Rodgers throws another pick. Hits the unnecessary roughness call out of bounds. it was over. It gets balloons to 40 to nothing. DJ Reed gets smoked on a touchdown, although not really necessarily his fault, but ugly. And, this was the 1 o'clock Romo Nance game. And it was frustrating, to be honest with you, because I felt like for a game that doesn't matter, the one thing you could come back to the Jets with the season is they keep pretty much every game close. And they've had some exciting moments, even in games that maybe necessarily weren't exciting. They've played hard. And as bad as they've been under Ulbrich, at least that's the one thing I guess you could give them credit for and give a lot of these guys. They did not play hard on Sunday. I don't think so. Sauce Gardner had some really poignant comments after the game saying guys are playing for themselves. Rodgers eventually takes himself out at 33 to nothing or 40 to nothing. Tyrod, goes in, throws 2 touchdowns. I thought he, in garbage time, yes, probably against a lot of backups, yes, but operated the offense much more efficiently. And again, it's against backups and whatever, but Garrett gets a touchdown, Conklin gets a touchdown. They just actually move the football. So that was nice to see, I guess. Other than that, like I said, not too many guys had spectacular performances by any means. Devontae Adams just short of 1,000. Garrett Wilson gets over 1,000. So, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start his Jets career, never been done before. And first since the 1960s, the Jets receivers had 3 consecutive 1,000 at all. So that's awesome to see. Rodgers did not get 500. I'll talk about the Rodgers thing of it all quickly. I don't want to belabor the point. Rodgers is not going to be here next year. I've probably 7-8 weeks ago, I felt like the tide was 50-50, 60-40 at best, maybe, right? Where, you could make the argument, and I guess you theoretically still could, that on paper or even on pedigree and tape, etc., Rodgers is the best option as a bridge next year. If you want to tell me that, I'm not necessarily disagreeing. But there's just been a lot more to Rodgers, especially lately, that has kind of rubs you the wrong way. It's the constant talking about being cut, potentially, that makes you feel like, hey, and I think this is not a new thought, but we've talked about it a lot, he's going to make the Jets cut him. That's what it keeps feeling like, or retire, or whatever it is. I don't mind, again, I've talked about it many times, I don't mind spamming Devontae with targets, but I do mind spamming Allen Lazard or not taking shots and things like that. And then just him and Garrett bickering, we got the trade, got the rumor of if Rodgers is back, then Garrett may request a trade. I wouldn't have to worry about that. Rodgers is not going to be back here, so there's no reason to necessarily feel I would say worried about that. Short term, especially, Garrett's going to be here. Long term, I would say they're going to need to show some serious commitment to winning and get Garrett comfortable with a quarterback, going forward. But money talks. Head coach and GM are going to talk, and we'll go from there. But yeah, Rodgers is done here. It's a shame it's worked out the way it did. He'll probably get number 500 on Sunday. He'll get a 17th start in a row, post Achilles, which is good for him. And Devontae will probably get his 1,000 yards, and good for them. I still love Devontae back, but it seems like without Rodgers, that's probably unlikely unless Aaron were to retire. When it comes to Aaron, though, look, man, he certainly played better. There's no question about it. He's been much better up until the Buffalo game. He had been putting together, he looked more athletic. He looked healthier. The arm still pops. But it's just too many plays game in and game out where they're getting aligned into the wrong play necessarily, or he's not taking the shot, or holding the ball a little longer than he maybe used to, and just little things. And, I think maybe a fresh start for both parties. If Aaron wants to go somewhere else, I kind of hope he retires and just it doesn't get worse, because he's the best thrower of the football I've ever seen. It has been a pleasure in some ways watching him this year, and getting to see him as a Jet it's still crazy sometimes to think about, but it's over. I think there's a much better chance the Jets quarterbacks next year are Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor than they are Aaron Rodgers at this point. And we talked about the JJ McCarthy thing 6-7 weeks ago, and I'm glad everyone's now on that. That's, it is what it is. We'll see. That's a discussion for the offseason. Kirk Cousins, I think he'll be a Brown, but again, discussion for the offseason. I want to hit on one last thing here. And again, short episode, New Year's Eve. Get, if you have 15, 20 minutes in the car going to some friends for dinner or party, pop it on. I'm sure the wife or the girlfriend or whoever will be excited about that one. But, when it comes to Mike Vrabel, the Jets requested Ron Rivera. They'll be interviewing Thursday. By the next time we record a pod, he'll have interviewed. And then secondly, Mike Vrabel released from his contract, in order to start interviewing with teams. And look, I don't know whether Mike Vrabel's going to be the Jets coach. I think there's other spots that are probably higher on his priority list. Vegas maybe hit or miss. Definitely the Patriots. And if the Patriots job opens, we're going to have a lot different discussion. I think he would love that job. I think they should have hired him last year. No bones about it. He'd bring back McDaniels and then run it back. If the Jets are serious about Mike Vrabel, not only is he getting an interview request this week, they should be interview requesting Ryan Cowden, the Giants. He's a special advisor on the Giants, but he is who Mike Vrabel's handpicked guy who was going to be in Tennessee before he got fired. So, that's certainly a name to watch. If the Jets are serious about Mike Vrabel, that's a guy who you want to talk about synergy and being hand in hand with each other and having the ability to kind of, Mike Vrabel's talked a lot about that kind of being aligned with the GM. Being aligned with the GM and everything like that makes a ton of sense. And Ryan Cowden is there's other names that would certainly go well with him, a Borgonzi, Mike Greenberg, John Spytek, etc. Agnew, all those guys. Dimitroff, Nagy, whoever it may be, those guys, Vrabel worked with Dimitroff and Nagy, and they were working there when he was in New England. So plenty of names. But Cowden's been his guy. And if the Jets were serious, he's a guy that they consider. I think you'd be pretty happy if Mike Vrabel and Ryan Cowden are the partnership the Jets end up acquiring. I don't think they're the favorite, but I certainly think they have a shot. When it comes to Vrabel and a potential staff, what that would look like, seems like he'd be bringing McDaniels or Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees would interest me far more than Josh McDaniels in 2025. Rees, 32-year-old, played at Notre Dame. I'm sure folks remember. He's obviously not that old. Was an OC with Notre Dame, an OC with Alabama, and then a passing game coordinator and tight ends coach with the Browns, working alongside Vrabel. So there's that, and then Shane Bowen, the Giants' defensive coordinator, would be probably the choice for Vrabel, who, he worked underneath Mike in Tennessee. Some other names, obviously, again, as things are fluid, Ron Rivera him and Rex are both going to get interviews. I'll say this with Ron Rivera: if you're looking at him as a defensive coordinator or just getting a veteran mind in the interview process, I understand it. I think Ron Rivera is a third job here. I'd be hesitant. Good football coach. I don't know if now's the time and place, but at least a good guy to get in the room and hear some ideas. And again, maybe it's that defensive coordinator type. If you went with a Liam Cohen, could you pair him with Ron Rivera? And that way you get the balance of a veteran head coach to kind of help show the ropes to the young hotshot play caller. Sure. But the Rex thing, and I'll finish with this. Appreciate it. I'm good. Look, if it gets down to it and Rex is the final guy, it is what it is. I thought Rex, we've talked about it before. I think he was the guy that probably should have came in week 5, just Saturdayed this thing, but with actual experience and would have been, potentially a lot of fun. If Rodgers isn't going to be here, which again, I don't believe he will, are you trusting Rex with developing a quarterback at this point? Maybe. Just hasn't coached in a really long time, man. And I appreciate the passion. I appreciate the want to. I just have if the way I would view Rex as a good hire is if the Jets were able to, grab a really hotshot OC, be able to build out the staff and analytics and scouting and good GM candidate and all that stuff. The Jets are getting a good GM candidate. The Jets are getting a hotshot offensive coordinator. You're probably getting Mike Vrabel, or you're probably getting Pete Carroll, or you're probably getting Liam Cohen, or you're probably getting Jesse Minter, or Brian Flores. The things that make Rex appealing also make a lot of these other guys appealing. So that's just kind of where I land on it. Again, he's just not in my top 5. I like to remember it, 2009, 2010 fondly, not necessarily. It would kind of be a shame if it failed here. Again, love Rex, love his passion. And if they hire him, everyone will be talked into it. But for right now, I think there's far stronger candidates the Jets to be far more aggressive about. Just obviously, as the year kind of winds down here, obviously, again, if you're listening to this tonight, appreciate it. Obviously, if you're listening tomorrow, Happy New Year. Appreciate it for listening as always. Again, 4 years, 4 years now officially doing the pod, and 1.6 million times you guys have downloaded this podcast on Apple and Spotify and those things. It's incredible. So appreciate it for listening as always. Spend time with friends and family, and we'll talk to you guys in 2025.